The DunnWisdom Morning Show. I am Melissa P. Dunn, CEO of MD Marketing Network and founder of this DunnWisdom movement. Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Stacey Luces. I just butchered her last name, but we're going to roll with it. Stacey, as you know, if you joined us last week, is going to teach us how to not only succeed, but to shine in a male-dominated workplace. She is a coach, she is a business strategist, and a fashionista. Stacey has been working in Fortune 500 companies and at various government positions for her 25 years career of leadership, management consulting, strategic planning, and all around just an amazing leader. Stacey is currently serving in a role as a strategist with the Department of Homeland Security's Federal Emergency Management Agency. And trust me when I tell you, you cannot get any more male-dominated than working for Homeland Security. Welcome back, Stacey.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's good to be back with you guys.
Fantastic. So if those of you who missed the first part 1 of our conversation with Stacey, check it out in the caption. I really do encourage you to go back and look at it so you can find out more about her story. But if you're just now being introduced to Stacey, why don't you give us like the Cliff Notes version of your journey?
So I think Melissa did an absolutely great job of introducing me. So my name is Stacey Luces. I am kind of that generalist. I've spent the bulk of my career doing management consulting and leading big projects for Fortune 100 companies. And I'm excited to give you some tips today on male-dominated industries, for which I know a lot about that. Back to you, Melissa.
Yes. So just to kind of sum it up a little bit, being with Fortune 100 companies, could you just share with us some of the brands that you've worked with in your career?
Sure. So I've worked for Bank of America. I've worked for Morgan Stanley. I've worked for Pepsi. I've worked for IBM. Quite the laundry list. And then in management consulting, I supported other federal agencies, including DoD. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. So I worked at the Pentagon years after 9/11. So that definitely was very male dominated and sort of influenced a lot of the discussion that we're going to have.
Okay, fantastic. So Pentagon experience, Department of Defense experience, and now at Homeland Security. Tell us, what would your #1 tip be for a woman to not only succeed, but shine in a male-dominated workforce? What would your first tip be?
Yeah, you know, I read this interesting statistic that by the age of 6, girls stop believing that they are capable of doing the things in a courageous and sort of unfiltered manner. And I think as we get older, these stereotypes kind of discourage us from pursuing male-dominated careers. You know, some of them that come to mind are IT, science and technology. I think there was thrown out there a percentage that while women make up about 48% of the overall U.S. workforce, only 37% of women are even on sort of chief executive or chief officer roles. And so that's something that I hope that our conversation can kind of, help you to think about. The #1 tip I have, I think, is, and it was quite a bunch of male-dominated industries, you guys. I think it would be to be courageous. I don't know if you guys have read the book, but if you haven't, I would strongly encourage you to read the book by Brene Brown. It's called Daring Greatly. And she says that courage starts with showing up and letting yourself be seen. And I think for me, coming from a small island, working my way up through corporate in the United States, definitely courage has been kind of my #1 characteristic here in male-dominated industries. I think having the courage to let your voice be heard and sort of break through some of those barriers, whether they're subtle or very obvious, like being, not invited to a meeting or something like that. I would also say that on top of courage is to taking that initiative and being prepared. Like I was always probably much more prepared than anyone else, But I think that also lent itself to having the confidence when I courageously stepped into that role or sat at the table or, you know, raised my hand with like an opinion in some of these very strong military-esque type settings, that you had something valuable to say that was going to help the mission and further the, you know, the project or the team or anything like that. And so stepping out of your own, you know, self, whatever barriers you're dealing with, and kind of just folding into that. I think it's my number one tip.
What could you give us an example of a time when you had to access courage?
Yeah, so this one's a funny one, but when I worked for IBM, you know, salary is something nobody talks about. Like, I don't know why. Just, it's salary, like what you make, what you earn. And I had a conversation with a colleague. We were all on the same project and found out that he was making about $40,000 more than I was for doing
the same work. 40,000
the same work.
not like 5,000 more, but a whole $40,000.
40. And I felt so humiliated, and also like, wow, I didn't know what to do. And so what I talked to you about, kind of having knowledge, and I went on salary.com. I figured out what my worth was, you know, folding in my MBA and all of the projects I had done. And they came out with this beautiful bell curve, and I was on the 15th percentile of that bell curve.
Wow.
And so it was crazy. And so I totally went to the partner who was in charge of us at the time, and I just kind of did a presentation for him. And I said, here's what I've delivered for this project in the last couple of years. Here's what some of my colleagues make. Here's the bell curve. I'm at the 15th percentile. I'd like to be at least over that 50th percentile. And I gave them 2 weeks to figure it out.
I love it. Okay, wait. So let's dissect that for a minute. So first of all, when you found out, you allowed yourself.
I was devastated.
Yeah. And you allowed yourself to feel your emotions, and then you're like, all right, let's do the research, and let's give them a business case.
Yes.
Why they need to do the right thing to bring me up to what my male colleague was making. And then you gave them a deadline.
And I gave them the value that I was bringing to the team and what it was worth to them. And the positioning power that I had, right, was that the clients really appreciated and depended on the work that I was doing. I was a valued member of the team. And so I gave them 2 weeks to figure things out. I'm not even going to dress this up. And day 15, I emailed and I said, hey, I haven't heard from anybody. And it was almost like they had forgotten about the conversation. And then they tried to give me like a bonus, and they said they had to wait till performance reviews and all of that stuff. And I sat really quietly, Melissa. Like I just kind of mulled over that. It was a Monday. I updated my resume. I posted it that night, and by Wednesday I had another job, making well over 6 years. And so I turned in my resignation. And they said it was a competitor, and so they that's when they got busy, right? That's when they started to, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Here's what we're going to offer you. And I was like, no, because it boiled down to a second thing, right? There's courage, but there's also integrity. Integrity for yourself and your value and what you're worth, but also your word. And I had already given my word to that other company. And also they had already shown me my intrinsic value to them, you know? And so I rolled out. I did.
Damn, girl. That is an amazing story. And
listen, I tell you this, but I was scared the whole time. I was like, oh my God, did I just quit my job? What happened? And when I got another job offer within 24 hours, I was with my brother-in-law at the time when I got the call and the offer. And I really was playing hardball because I was quietly furious, right? That my value and my worth, and I knew how hard I worked, right? Everybody knew it. And then to find that out really cut the legs out from under me. And so I say that in life, things like that are going to happen. And it's how it's the comeback, right? Like, what are you going to do about it? we're not going to roll over and be like, oh, me or my, or no, you get in a warrior position, right? Take a couple deep breaths and then figure out a strategy. And so I don't know if we're in the second tip, but the second tip is a great mentor, right? Like you should have in your sphere of not only influence, but the circles that you are in, people that you look up to, that you emulate, that you admire. And so I think having a good mentor, if you don't have a good mentor, you know, find somebody on TV that you admire, or a podcast. For me, also just having strong communities of women who were equally warrior-minded.
I love that.
I think really,
yes.
Yeah, just emboldened me to be like, no, I'm not going to put up with this. And I feel like we are so risk adverse as women sometimes. Like we don't want to rock the boat or offend anybody, but really it's about your innate sense of what's right and wrong. And I think once you can stand by that, and the integrity of the thing holds true, because nobody could argue that you were doing arguably the same work, probably even better, but making so much less than your male counterparts was not fair or equitable. So yeah, that happened.
Listen, I'm so intrigued by the story. I think that there's so many different lessons there, but I think the biggest lesson, at least the biggest takeaway from me, is, you know what? You've got to be a woman of your word to yourself. You said to them, listen, 2 weeks. You gave them 2 weeks and 1 day.
Yes.
And because you were clear about your own value, and you understood that by them not by them not even entertaining the conversation and taking you seriously, what they were saying about what they thought about your value. And you're like, you know what? Not good enough.
Right?
Let's go. Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
And this is a funny thing, right? Sometimes Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I was going to move on to the next tip, but finish your thought.
Yeah. No, I was going to say sometimes the unspoken is as powerful as the spoken.
Yes.
And so by what they didn't do or didn't say, to me, that was this resounding bell in my head. And yeah, it goes back to self-worth, right? And worthiness. So yeah. Yeah,
it said a lot. And the second tip about finding a good mentor, like I've learned, I would actually add to that. I would say find a good mentor and a good sponsor, because there's a huge difference. For me, a mentor is somebody that I go to when I'm trying to make a decision. I'm trying to think through strategy. I have a challenge that's before me, and I need to figure out, I need to kind of have them help me to see a bigger picture, right? Because I'm kind of stuck here, and they've been there, done that, so they can kind of share their wisdom.
Yeah.
But a sponsor, for me, is somebody that can open doors.
Yeah.
That you call them in a situation like that, and you say, this is what I'm going through. And they're like, all right, let me make a call. And it's done. I need more of those people in my life.
Yes. We all do. We all do. And you know, I think fondly back on people like that. I've been really blessed. I'm not sure. You know, my husband always tells me I'm not blessed in some things, but I'm blessed in my career. And I do think that you get what you give. And so I've been really fortunate to have been put in front of or crossed paths with and linked arms with some truly phenomenal people that have had amazing life experiences. And, you know, I think chemistry with a sponsor like that has to be important, right? Like you have to click, right? That raise each other's vibration. And sometimes people get intimidated by a sponsor because sometimes they're in a more senior role or maybe not even in your industry. But these types of people with this generosity of spirit, they get as much as they give to you, right? Whether it's advice or a different perspective, or I didn't think about it that way until you shared with me how you were feeling, or, you know, what happened. They get as much as you get. And so never think you are taking and not giving, right?
Good point, Stacey. Good point. And you know what? I strongly believe that abundance is a cycle of giving and receiving. And you're right. It is important when you're in a mentor-mentee relationship or a sponsor-mentee relationship for you to make sure that you're both clear about the value of what you're both giving and receiving. That's a very powerful point.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So what's your third tip?
So, my third tip is, I think it was, that concept, I want to say imposter syndrome. And so I think
own your worth.
Own your worth. I think that you decide who you are, right? Nobody gets to decide for you who you are. That is your decision and your promise, your unbreakable promise to yourself. You decide how you show up in the world. And I think women, we show up as these identities that we assume throughout our lives, right? Like the best mom or a good wife or a good daughter. And we take on sometimes a self-serving role. And we think that being confident or wanting to be a CEO or wanting to run your own business or wanting to be in a male-dominated industry, like you second guess yourself and those ambitions. I don't call those ambitions in the sense of like a negative connotation. I think you have a blueprint for your life, right? You have a higher purpose. And I think sometimes there are things that you will think and do and say that are your unique perspectives on the world. And sometimes it can change and influence the direction of, another person or a community or, a country, right? I once knew this woman that wrote financial policy for a country. And she was the most humble, unassuming person and always had an issue with confidence. And so that really drove me in my coaching business to want to work with especially women that own their own companies, right? Because I'm walking the same path as you. And so not necessarily the same journey, but definitely the same lessons. And I think together we're just stronger. So when it comes to knowing your worth, I think knowing your values, like what the top 3 values for yourself are, is imperative, right? For me, it's integrity, it's courage, and it's kindness. Very simple. If I can hang my hat on those 3 and walk away from a conversation or a client or a project or whatever it is, I'm happy with that. If they don't meet those criteria and they're making me feel a little bit icky, it's probably not the right thing for you. And your intuition is probably speaking up.
For sure. I believe in that too, that it's important for you to get to your core values and that every decision that you make, they have to align with that. Such a powerful example. And when you talked about your experience before at that company where you had to kind of stand up for the value that you were bringing, that's a perfect example of knowing your worth, of owning your worth.
And it's not always a comfortable place. It's not always a place that feels like a warm cup of tea. Sometimes it's like, you have to move through that discomfort.
You do, and you have to sit in it for a minute, right? And sometimes discomfort is you're just like on the edge of the breakthrough. You're just on the edge of it. Sometimes if we just sit in it for a minute, breathe, and own it, that makes a big difference. So what do you say to a woman that is trying to figure out what her worth is? I mean, we all at some point in our lives have heard people telling us that we're not good enough. We've sometimes told that to ourselves.
Absolutely.
That we're not good enough. How do you overcome imposter syndrome? And I know that's but that's a topic that we can speak at for length. But how have you overcome it?
So I think that the biggest learning for me is to elevate your circles, right? Elevate the type of people that you surround yourself with. Surround yourself with thinkers and dreamers. And you're like, well, Stacey, how do I do that, right? Like, I don't know that many people, or I don't know how to get out of this. I mean, if you are in a situation where economically you cannot afford to join or pay the dues for, you know, an all-female networking or a mastermind group, or afford a coach, go to your local library, right? Ask them if they have informal mentor-mentee kind of roles. You'll find a lot of times people who are altruistic go to these places and would love to sort of give you that feedback. If you do have the sort of capacity to hire a coach or join a mastermind, I would say networking with like-minded individuals raises the caliber of your thinking. It almost demands that you level up. And in the leveling up, right, as uncomfortable as that feels, the benefit and the value to not only your career aspirations, but your life, quality of life, and the happiness factor, right? And the contentment and the, I'm just happy having this cup of tea, watching the sunrise. There is a really quiet beauty to that transcends making $1 million. You know, both are equally amazing. Don't get me wrong, but yeah.
I get it, and I agree with you. I mean, I always say that your network helps to determine your net worth.
Absolutely.
And certainly from my experience, when I'm feeling content and happy and joyful and peaceful and connected, that's when I'm most creative, and that's when I am most productive. And so creativity and productivity leads to, you know, producing excellent value, which then leads to more money.
Yeah. And you know, there's this saying that life is short, right? And you know, I've already spilled all the beans to you, Melissa, so may as well. Back in 2013, I mean, I was, you know, right in this corporate high of amazingness, traveling all over the country, meeting, you know, the best of the best in terms of industry practitioners, and my health was suffering. And to cut a real long story short, you know, my kids were super small. My son was about 3 and my daughter was about 5.5 at the time. And I got super sick, had to have emergency surgery, and flatlined twice.
Wow.
And that this is an inside joke. But when I came back out of that, right, like coming out of that recovery period, I jokingly told my dad, I said, you know, hey man, I've got to do better, because I didn't see a lot of bright light. And so a secret joke about that is my personal Instagram handle is light seeker, because I've got to like seek the light. But I say that to say that once something like that happens to you, and hopefully for you guys, it's not that dramatic, right? Where you literally die and come back. Things change, right? Your perspectives change, the way that you treat people changes, what you want for yourself and your family changes, your desire to impact others changes. And so I would say to you, don't wait till something like what happened to me happens to you to kind of find your inside fire, right? And if you are having trouble finding it, there are resources for you to do that, many of which I'm sure Melissa shares with you, with her other speakers. You know, I'm happy to share. I think my email and all of that stuff is going to be available to you. But I would encourage you to not wait until something really debilitating happens to figure out that, oh my gosh, I don't have time left, right? You've got a lot of time. And so take yourself out of that thinking that you are stuck and that you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Be a light seeker, you know, and yeah,
I love it. Be a light seeker.
Yeah.
Listen, so you need to do like a social media post on that. Become a light seeker. That's like a whole product,
right?
That's a whole product.
It's how I live my life. I seek light. I seek people that bring me light. I give light, and it's not even light a match, right? It's an innate kindness and fullness of being that sparkles through people. And you know, some people, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you've interviewed like a bunch of people. You know, sometimes you talk to somebody and you walk away and you're exhausted and you need to take a nap.
Yes.
Those are not your people.
Those are not my people. But I have to tell you that I have encountered those types of people less and less and less, because I'm at the point in my life now that they don't even show up in my space.
Yeah.
And I love that. But that's intentionality, right? That's being intentional about you, of course, being the light yourself, because then like attracts like.
Yep. So don't be discouraged. Like, find a way out of the box, right? There's this really funny meme. I think it's a meme, but it's this beautiful bird in like this really beautiful golden cage, and the little bird is, her wings are like clutching the bars of the cage, and she's looking out, peeking at the world. And she's like, if only I could get out of this cage, I would do all this cool stuff, and I'd be free, and I'd sing at the top of my lungs. And then the camera almost pans to the back of the cage, and guess what? The door is open.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
But isn't it so funny though, Stacey, in that a lot of us are living like that. A lot of us are going through life so unconsciously, where we've actually not only put ourselves in the cage, but kept ourselves stuck there because
you feel safe. Yeah. You think it's safe in there, and you feel stagnant, and you can't sleep at night. And that's, I specifically love to coach women over 40 with kids. I mean, I coach anybody, but that particular group for me, because something happens in your late 30s, early 40s, maybe it's midlife awakening. I don't want to call it a crisis. But I feel like at this point, right? Yeah, the kids are growing up, and if your identity, whether it's you own your own business and your identity has been wrapped up in children and like working so hard and like doing the grind without passion and sort of a bigger purpose, you're gonna feel it. Like you're gonna feel it in your soul, and everything is harder. Yeah.
And so now you're trying to decide on what's next. So 40s is kind of like your sweet spot for coaching clients.
Yeah.
I love it. So you've made it through surviving in male dominated industries. What would you say to a young woman who is currently trying to decide on her next step? Like, how can she prepare herself to step into a role in a traditionally male dominated workplace?
I think before you even do that, you should sit down and make a list of your values. Make a list of the things you enjoy doing. What makes you smile? What makes 8 hours fly by and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I sat, walked, did whatever for 8 hours, and I didn't miss a beat. Like, I was so alive. I think before you even decide on what career, and this is something we all do in college, we just kind of throw Play-Doh at something and hope it sticks, right? Like, we just pick a major. But figure out what you love to do. If it's art, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, whether it's construction, whether it's driving trucks, I don't know, but find out what you love if you are in that position that Melissa just talked about, and go from there. What are the careers or the industries that will allow you to bring your whole self to the workplace, where you are not conforming and adapting to fit into whether it's a male-dominated industry or any industry, and then you're going to be miserable, right? Wondering what to do with yourself. Like, figure out what you love, figure out what lights your spark, and then go from there and say, okay, I love to do, like, for me, right? My major is marketing and international business. I found myself doing data analytics and policy, bored. And so I segued and so bored. I'm an island girl. That's why I say island CEO, island girl CEO. Like, I love color. I love to be creative. And so I started my small business to do personal styling and help women feel as confident as, they want to be, like showing up in their best skin, right? Their best selves. So find what you love to do. Don't do it backwards. Like, I feel some of our generations did it, like go that route first and then blossom from there.
I
right?
love it. I love it. You have given us some amazing tips, some really powerful words of wisdom. Thank you so much for joining us, Stacey. And we'll have to keep in touch, man. I can't wait
For
to see what's
sure.
next for you.
Thank you guys for having me. I hope that something sparked for somebody today, but I deeply appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining us for this DunnWisdom Morning Show episode. I want to remind you that we have a Women Getting It Done Facebook group where you will learn more. You'll be able to connect with other like-minded women who are getting things done in life and in business. It's a space where women celebrate women, and of course, we keep each other accountable, motivated, and inspired to live our best life. Thank you for joining us, and remember, be kind and loving to yourself today. You deserve it. Be well.